Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of On Track. Excited to have you all joining us. For those I don't know, my name is Kristen Parent. I am the Program and Events Manager here at the Chamber. Very pleased to have you guys joining us virtually for an important topic, professionally assertive, how to develop assertive communication skills. So excited to have Valerie Rask from Upper Iowa University representing as a sponsor and also as our speaker today. So thank you to Upper Iowa for sponsoring and also for TDS. We are going to try to make this interactive as possible. So I know Valerie's got some points throughout that she's going to ask for input or utilize the chat. So please jump in there. Chat's great for those aha moments or those things you're like, oh, totally, or asking questions or sharing thoughts. Please feel free to use that. We are going to ask you guys to keep yourselves on mute for the most part. So again, that's the little red slash through the microphone down in the bottom. Would love to see your bright, shining, smiling faces. If you want to turn your cameras on, that would be great. Sometimes it's nice to know we're talking to people and not just those black boxes. So with that, I'm going to introduce Valerie. One more thing I want to point out is we are recording this session. Valerie's going to share her slides afterwards. So if you're registered for this event, you will get an email from me that includes both of those things, and then you can share them with anyone else on your team that might find value in it. So joining us today is Valerie Rask from Upper Iowa University. Valerie has 17 years of experience in leadership roles within nonprofit organizations and higher education institutes. She's an advocate for professional development and lifelong learning. Valerie has her master's in workforce education and development with a focus on adult learning. She currently serves as the academic and admissions advisor for Upper Iowa University here in Madison. And she's also probably a familiar face to many of you because she attends lots of the chamber events. So Val, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. It's a great honor to have been invited to be a part of On Track and continuing serving as a sponsor for this event. As Kristen and I have talked previously about the means of this event being online Zoom meetings and trying to still provide professional development to the community. It's been wonderful for me to experience it this past year. So again, I'm grateful and honored to be a part of it today. So Kristen and I talked a while back about looking at professional assertiveness and how to develop those communication skills, as On Track has been talking about communication for this past year. It's kind of funny that she asked me we talked about this topic because as reflecting on my past professional careers and development, this is an area that can definitely speak to personally. There will be some ideas and techniques that I'll discuss as just knowledgeable for those who go through communication programs and ideas and thoughts. But some of this is actually even personal reflective of me, and I'll prompt that of you as well as we kind of go through some of these ideas. But just to start off with, and hopefully the slides will progress through as I'd like. Okay. When we talk about assertiveness, what exactly are we talking? Well, it's an emotion. Just like all emotions, it needs to be controlled, developed, but for professionals, it enables us to express your opinions, your thoughts, while still respecting your colleagues' perspectives simultaneously. It can feel like a balancing act sometimes when you think in terms of defending your ideals while maintaining that positive professional connection with your teammates, your managers, whomever you're interacting with, even within the public, if you are serving your clients and customers. Many of you, whether past, present, or future, have served in leadership roles or mid-management or entry-level positions. And so the notion of assertiveness can be applied in all levels of employment. So as we go through this topic today, no matter your current place in your career, think of terms of leadership, mid-management, whether you're answering both to leaders and those you are leading, those who are behind you, you have to answer to, as they progress through their career, and those who are starting off at entry level, how do you grow in this area yourself? There may be points that you need to reflect on yourself. And again, you need to grow and develop in that. And that's why you're here today. That's why you go through the Chamber of Commerce and their events and their on-track communication programs this year. And again, how do you assist others around you? If you're in a leadership role, how do you maintain unity and direction without causing, a harmful workplace or an unproductive workplace? The roles that we take on sometimes require a lot of reflection and flexibility, while still make sure that whatever the ideals is for your workplace is still moving forward. So really think of a balancing act sometimes when it comes to our behavior. The scales can tip back and forth either way a lot of times, depending on the day, depending on your interactions and what the scenarios are that you have to deal with. But think of, the extremes of passive and aggressive behavior. Assertiveness is sitting in the middle and bringing all things into balance. So while sometimes that passiveness, which we all know passive and aggressive behavior, we've seen that, and I'm going to prompt you all in a moment for that. That passive behavior can miss the mark sometimes. And although we think we're not hurting anyone, it's not really helping your workplace move forward and whatever is needing to be accomplished. While aggressiveness can be just as damaging with the sense that you're hurting individuals. So just for a quick chat, because I do, as Kristen said, I want to hear from you sometimes. Without naming names, have you encountered individuals who have experienced or expressed these extreme behaviors of passive or aggressive, and what kind of interaction do you typically have with them? Like I said, no naming names whenever you're typing in that. Has anyone had that type of interaction with individuals who are passive or aggressive, and what's been the result of it? Passive and aggressive can be confusing, leading to frustration and disagreement. Absolutely. Aggressive virtual interaction, meeting attendance, but changes her face-to-face. Yeah. Passive, not good. Aggressive feels mean. Absolutely. Maureen, I like your honesty. I'll have some honest moments myself too. Because as I said earlier, this is a topic that I have even dealt with before. And I am guilty of both sides of the extreme of behavior. So again, I appreciate the honesty of it. So again, this balancing act, it's a constant reflection, trying to be flexible and making sure that we're still moving forward. It may take a while. Kristen said, I've been a professional for 17 years. Some of you have had careers that are longer than mine, some shorter, and we all know that we're in process as we progress through our professional life. And that's okay, that we take the time to, again, just stop, reflect. My behavior, is it appropriate? Is someone else's behavior is appropriate? And we're going to, again, talk about this a little bit more. There's one more kind of visual I want to show of this idea of aggressiveness, though. Looking at this grid for a moment, how do you align your needs and thoughts with others' needs and thoughts? If you see at the top, you're okay, you're not okay. To the side, I'm not okay, I am okay. And where do you fall within this grid? And so, like I said, I'm not going to lie, I have definitely functioned in all of these areas before. Passive aggressive. Oh, that sounds okay to deal with. No, not necessarily when you are in charge, when you're in a leadership role. It can be construed as very unprofessional if you are passive aggressive towards clients or customers or the public, whoever you're dealing with, and those who are answering to you. If you're completely passive as a leader, your staff, your employees, whomever you are overseeing, don't know where to go. Where do they take next steps? What kind of solution do they need? And so again, now considering both that balance between the passive and aggressive that I first showed in this grid, I'm very aware that sometimes you may even feel that you're operating at an appropriate assertive level, only to find that those around you think that you're being too passive or you're being too aggressive, or that you've done this to others. And so it's, you don't always know how you're functioning. So again, this whole topic for the year of communication to continue to grow in this area and to reflect is important. Assertive training, that's available. That's a thing. Today is a snapshot. But if you feel like this area is a hindrance to you, or even some of you know, if you have staff members that you oversee, I would encourage you to continue to seek out additional support and resources, because for some individuals, it may hold them back in their career, knowing that they are very capable of great things. Only this personality quirk, this emotion is difficult for them. You know, as a professional, I've realized over the years, you are the subject matter expert, the SME. There is reason, there is purpose for your hiring, your training, and you have to have confidence in this. You have to have boldness with it. And I would also add, between those two ideas, you need to have humility with it too. So don't become too arrogant and prideful out of this workshop today. Think, you walked away saying Valerie can be, was told me I can be more arrogant. No, that's not it by any means. And making sure that you're always encouraging those who you may see that are struggling in this area, because sometimes, as I've reflected on myself over my professional career, individuals have had to do that for me, and I appreciate that, and I turn around and do that for someone else. As Kristen said, I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning, so this is an area of growth that may take time, but like anything, the more you practice, the easier, more natural it's going to start to become. So why is this important? Some of you have already kind of hinted at some ideas, but particularly for yourself, why do you feel like this type of professional development, this type of assertive training is important for you? What have you seen it for yourself, both as an employee or if you're in like a leadership role? What has been for yourself? I know Maureen already said that she was guilty of both at times. But again, what about for yourself? I know for me as an employee, having some assertiveness, and I'll talk about some of my stories in a little bit. I used to have lots of volunteers or public that were constantly providing suggestions, criticism, but I still had to hold the ground. Realizing, Tom saying that it's important to realize you're on a spectrum and know how to be positive outcome, not be too pushy, okay? Again, for yourself. Corrine, I like to advocate for my expertise among colleagues, yes, and board members without coming across pushy. Advocating, I like that word. Advocating for yourself in management in a balanced way is okay for Chris. Maureen, perfect. Yes, you are the subject matter expert, so being comfortable expressing that while you can still respect others. Perfect. And that's going to be what we're talking about today. So once as we go through this, what is this for yourself? That's why we're a part of this conversation right now. So again, why is this important? First off, we're going to talk about understanding feelings and controlling temper. As someone is trying to express communication in an assertive manner, you're always thinking of how do you stand firm in your opinions and thoughts while controlling that anger and temper that might come up. There's a Stoic philosopher I've watched or I've read sometimes in discourses of Epictetus. When we are frustrated, angry, or unhappy, never hold anyone except ourselves, that is, our judgments, accountable. So it's not necessarily the things that upset us, it's our judgment about those things. Those things are just things. They're opinions, they're thoughts, they're objects, whatever they might be. It's how we interact with it, our judgments of it, that drive our emotion. And so if you're functioning in an assertive manner, we can put forth our opinions, our judgments, without those opinions and judgments actually ruling over us. And that is hard to distinguish sometimes, because some people function of like, well, I'm a very passionate person. Okay, but at the same time, you are in control of that. And so to not constantly give over to every single thought in control, or to lose control and everything, is important. And I'll get into self-control later on. Communication that is assertive is going to build some honest relationships and interactions. We are talking about the workplace, but this could be in any interaction, your home, your friend circle, letting people know what you're about, letting your honesty in your words stand for itself. Nobody likes lying and manipulation in relationships. So building that trust among your colleagues and managers, whomever you're interacting with, is important. When it comes to assertive training or assertive communication, it starts to improve your own self-esteem, because it teaches you actually, again, how to confidently express yourself, making those choices. If you have to constantly validate what you're doing and why you're doing this to everyone, they might start to question your authority or question if you are that subject matter expert. But if you can constantly portray that you are confident in these decisions, it's going to become a better scenario. And I know sometimes it feels like a fake it till you make it, but that's okay sometimes. We all have been in the same boat at different points in our careers. But again, you are the subject matter expert. Your knowledge, your understanding of any area. I know we all come from different backgrounds. That is foundational for your career, for your workplace. And so you need to be able to express that, and again, grow in that for yourself. I think we all know that during the pandemic, job satisfaction became questionable and important at times. And so when you're looking at this, growing in this assertiveness, knowing that where you're at in your career, you should see some job satisfaction start to increase, not just within yourself, but those that you're working with, those who are maybe struggling themselves in this area and they need to build up their assertiveness, because there's a reason why they are working. We're made to work, not just because I have a graduate degree in workforce education, but we are all made to work. We're made to do something. And so this area seems more important than ever, as people are really reevaluating their job choices, their careers, their workplace. Is it conducive to actually where they can grow? Can they see themselves? Can they stay? They have that satisfaction to constantly show up and put in their work day in, day out, and knowing that they are going to be valued in it. So when it comes to assertive communication as well, we've all been in, I'm assuming, collaborative efforts at times, and sometimes those collaborative efforts can be a challenge. And so if you are growing in assertiveness and that you're communicating your ideas and your thoughts without becoming, emotionally attached all the time, you should start to see some minimizing of those workplace challenges. You are communicating straightforward, the exchange of these ideas and viewpoints. As I kind of thought about this notion, I think back to all the way back to high school when this became a thing. It was the bane of most students' existence in school, were group projects, where no one knew what they were supposed to do, but at the same time, everyone seemed to want to take something and drive it really hard at times. People don't want to take ownership or responsibility, but they're so aggressive, they come up as bullying, and it throws off any collaborative effort. And this, I joke about high school, but the same thing in higher education, same thing within the workplace. If you are serving on a committee that is between different entities and, it's a community group, some people like to, bully people around, or again, no one's taking ownership of responsibilities of the needs of whatever is happening. That assertiveness, you start to realize you need to work together on these things, and it should minimize those challenges. Again, going back to the idea of teamwork then and job collaboration, that you're as an employee, your staff, your employers, whoever you are working with, should start to feel valued. Again, it goes back to the job satisfaction. when higher education, there's a notion that for most individuals, they do not progress on in their degree, not because of finances, not because of difficulty of grades. It's actually feeling connected. And being a part of a team, you have to feel connected. If I step away, do people, are they going to notice me gone? Do they care? Is something going to be affected within the work itself? That input, that value they have to the team has to be recognized. And again, that assertiveness, when you put forth that effort, it should be recognized. Problem solving, decision-making skills start to improve. You've probably, I don't know where everyone is coming from in their daily life, their daily work, but you were probably doing a lot of problem solving and a lot of quick decisions at times. I know I've been in that spot before where you have a constant need or a constant decision that has to be made every couple minutes, depending on the nature of the job and what's going on in that time. And it can be exhausting sometimes, but if everyone is looking to you to make those answers, to provide those answers, to make those decisions, you have to step up. You have to take that ownership because you are in that role. And so again, that assertiveness of knowing you are firm in your decisions, making sure everyone's good with it and move forward, because there's going to be something else that's going to come up. We all know that there's always another decision to make. And so to kind of gripe and over consume, trying to figure something out, sometimes you just got to keep moving forward. Setting healthy boundaries. So I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great people in my career, whether they were direct colleagues, whether they were leaders, supervisors, or sometimes they were volunteers that I had to work with, and with my nonprofit background. Having those healthy boundaries and being, again, putting yourself forward in an assertive manner, not passive, not aggressive, establishes those boundaries where it needs to be done. No one wants to feel underappreciated. No one wants to feel bullied by those that they're working with. What's the fun in that? No one wants to feel treated as a doormat. No one wants to be the one who's doing that to others. I mean, no one wants to be the one bullying. And so setting those healthy boundaries, that assertive personality, those communications, knowing this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is the thoughts that I have, making sure that no one else is going to necessarily, they may bump up against it, to be honest. I've had plenty of that too, or there is the conflict. But just as I said, why all this is important, you start to realize how you can work together a bit more on it. So how do we start to do this? When it comes to the different types of elements of professional assertiveness, there's a couple different ways. I joke with the cartoon that's on here about finishing my report. No, that's not my job. Going back to healthy boundaries, there's different parts of it that when you stop and reflect, maybe you'll start to realize there are some parts that you are very strong in, and maybe some parts of it that you know that you need some work in. So starting off of clarity, what am I talking about? Just being clear with your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings. When you can demonstrate that clarity, you can be more decisive. You can provide those decisions quickly and honestly, presenting your side, your opinion, your thought coherently. People shouldn't have to try to, need you to draw a map for them of what you're trying to get at. But if you want to ensure that your words, your actions can actually achieve an intended purpose, you need to be able to coherently state these things. What's the flip side of that? Active listening, taking time to actually listen to your counterparts for their opinions and their thoughts, to create those productive conversations in your workplace. I'm sure that, again, as I said earlier, you kind of bump up against each other and what those might be, what those ideas might be. But if someone knows that you're actually actively listening to them, you respect what they're saying, what they have to say, it's going to produce a better outcome for you in the workplace, rather than just trying to shut everything down on them. A calm voice. I'm gonna throw myself under the bus sometimes. I have had individuals legitimately tell me that they're scared of me. Because sometimes my voice sounds like this when I'm assertive, but if it starts to get any louder, they're really can be a little nervous sometimes. And at the same time, it took a long time as a professional to get to even this level of calmness in your voice. Sometimes when you start off, let's think of individuals who are kind of entry level in your field. I worked with a lot of college students over the years. They can be quiet, shy little individuals who are just starting off. And so you, as that individual who's kind of that middle person, or if you're in a leadership role, as an assertive communicator using this normal, calm voice, you don't have to yell to get your point across. But at the same time, if no one can actually hear you, that's going to be a problem as well. So knowing, again, that whenever you're speaking to individuals, is it respectful? Are you dignified in it? Even if your opinions or your viewpoints are contrary to what they are talking about. I already mentioned the relationship aspect, but again, honesty, that professional assertiveness requires honesty. I like that comment, Tom. Yes, raising your voice doesn't make you any less wrong or any more right. Yes, you can still be wrong and yell. Absolutely. So again, honesty, bringing that into your communication whenever you are trying to be assertive, you're not going to get anywhere by lying. And that's period. I know that seems like an adult concept that we all get, but it happens. No one wants to put themselves out there as though they are, not living up to a standard that they had in their mind or what people think of them. And so they may lie to cover up, or maybe they're covering up a sin that they've created. Whatever that might be, knowing again that if you're trying to communicate, your word should speak for itself. You're not having to raise your voice. You're not having to lie in order to communicate. And this goes into the last point of just giving facts. Some people don't like facts, but facts are facts. They're not meant to be harmful in themselves, but it should be demonstrating what is the bottom line. What are we about? It is your role to be able to ensure that any discussion you have with coworkers is driven by the facts. Now, my professional career, I've had to deal with a lot of different potential scenarios, and my former supervisor, I played the what if game with them a lot. And that's okay to an extent, because there are some, at the time that potential, that particular career was very much safety driven in my mind because it dealt with children. So I had a lot of what if things in my head that I had to work through, and those scenarios had to be worked, and my supervisor respected that. But at the bottom line, we also have to just look at the facts. What are things that are actually going to happen, and let that guide our discussion, guide our conversation, so that we can stay on topic. Because you play the what if game, you're going to easily go down a lot of rabbit holes, and it's not going to be very productive. So stopping for a second, what elements that I've just kind of gone through, the clarity, active listening, calm voice, honesty, facts, that you have felt like you've been difficult for you in the past, or even currently? And I said, I'm looking for some honesty here. Self-reflection. Tom says active listening. Don't jump ahead and start with your next train of thought before the other person's done talking. Clarity. Okay. Brooke also says active listening. Yeah, Maureen, you may be right, but yeah, once you start getting agitated, your voice starts going up. Like I said, I've definitely been in that spot before. Okay, so how do we move on to working through this. I mean, the whole point is we've talked kind of the whys and what parts of assertive communication there are, but how do we grow in this area? Well, there are a few techniques and that I want to talk with in the last few moments that we have. To the extent that realizing we're all in progress, but these are proven techniques, and they're actually things that I think we all do. We just didn't know they had a name for them. Fogging being one of them. I know, again, I've done some of this myself. So what fogging is, when you take criticism with ease without being defensive or anxious, particularly if that criticism starts to feel manipulative or aggressive. You can politely acknowledge truth to the criticism, but it doesn't necessarily have to change your opinions. It leaves you with the ability to have some sort of resolution of the issues in a way that just feels much more composed and not forced. Again, I've done this many times because I've dealt with a number of different individuals, and it's a proven technique that, again, hopefully you guys have done yourself. Negative assertion. Can you take the good with the bad? You look honestly at your behavior, your personality, and you try and see yourself the way that others do. And can you accept that part of who you are? So acceptance of both the positive and the negative traits that could actually help you react. If you know your natural inclination towards things and people say something to you, can you accept it? Can you do it thoughtfully? It doesn't feel good sometimes, but negative assertion can allow you to better understand yourself and to acknowledge that truth and still share that with others. Repeated assertion. It's going to sound like a broken record. It may come from one person. It may come from a lot of individuals, but you've remained composed and firm in decisions, even if you had several attempts to get you to try to get to a different opinion and viewpoint. Maybe what you really believe is what you believe, and you don't need to change it, no matter how many times you're told. Again, in my professional career, I've had numerous programs and events that I've had to oversee, thousands of individuals interacting with those events and programs that I've run. Everyone's going to have an opinion. If you keep changing to reflect all of those opinions, you're going to change it every single day, every single hour, because everyone has an opinion about everything. And as I said before, with the quote from that Stoic philosopher, you can have the opinions, but they can't rule you. And at the same time, you shouldn't let others' judgments and opinions rule you as well, because you're never going to accomplish anything. A workable compromise. So we all know it's beneficial to compromise with another person, and it doesn't have to affect your self-respect or your conscience, but sometimes it just needs to be done. For instance, let's say you had a coworker that's busy, you're supposed to meet, and you both agreed to meet up, but they can't show up until a little bit later because they need to finish their work and their immediate commitments. That's a compromise. You'll meet at a later time. You can still stand your ground. You still want to meet. Some people tend to act like every single thing, the house is on fire, like it's immediate. Everything needs to be done right then and there. That's not how the world needs to function. It's not how you can function. If everything seems like such a high priority, you're just creating more stress on yourself and your workplace. You're not moving forward because, again, everything is a high priority. The fact that the printer is not working to your supervisor is wanting something else. It's not always a high priority. I mean, if your supervisor asks you for something, of course it's a priority, but like I said, know that not everything is such a high stress situation. Negative inquiry is the last one. So if this, with this technique, enabling you to deal with that negative criticism from those who are actually close to you. One of the previous ones I mentioned with a negative assertion that other people are looking at it, who maybe have no real investment or direct interaction with what you're doing on that daily workplace environment on a regular basis. But the main goal is to really figure out for yourself, is that criticism, is it constructive or not? You know, I've worked in higher education for the last 10 years. I didn't divulge that, but that's how long I've been in this. And I've had to work with individuals across many, many different departments, and all for the greater good of how do we serve students. And with those immediate staff members, the colleagues in the departments, everyone had a different perspective. In higher education, they talk a lot about silos, that you need to break down the silos in order to serve students. Well, if I provide feedback, are they going to accept that, knowing that I'm just trying to serve the students? Same thing. Are they going to send me negative feedback and I'm not going to fall apart over it? You know, if it's valid, if it's constructive, I need to decide if I need to take that advice. If it's not, can I still not react? Listen to them professionally, personally, and just move on. These are all part of that assertive training, knowing that there's parts that I need to piece together sometimes. Last few tips. Everyone has their own personality, right? So your personality is what sometimes is steering your communication and your assertiveness. So you have to figure out within your workplace, how do you act? How do you respond while interacting, conversing with others? This is going to sound really silly. Sometimes rehearsing what you have to say could be helpful. I know it sounds silly, but you know, there are going to be some scenarios that you can't anticipate. I do this bad habit of playing out conversations in my head. Kristen, literally, I said it and she typed it. You play out conversations in your head, thinking through how you're going to react. Maureen, same thing. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's not, if it's driving some temper or anger issues. Again, I've done that before. So rehearsing it out so that you know if it's a familiar workplace situation that's always coming up, how can you address it? You may take it even one step forward of acting it out with someone. Maybe you've got a colleague or a friend that understands and can provide some, you know, positive communication back to you of how to work through this. You know, that request for some honest feedback of what you're struggling with in your workplace, or again, those that you're around, what they're honestly struggling with, so they can work through those things. As I said earlier, sometimes the practice of it feels awkward at first, but it starts to become more natural when you actually start to go through those. Self-control. I said earlier about the control before, but can you have a free exchange of ideas, opinions, making sure everyone's being heard while controlling those emotions? That's not something that I know I really feel like is taught very well anymore, is how to control emotions and not let them rule you, but you make that choice. How can you have a natural, neutral facial expression when you're communicating? I've had extremes where people know exactly what I'm thinking based upon my look. I had a supervisor that did that when I was not in agreement with something. He's like, let's stop. We need to talk. Val has a look. He knew the look. While other times people have no concept of what I'm thinking, because I'm making sure that whatever is taught, whatever is being told to me is not going to run away in my head and start to cause anger and temper issues. And so knowing that what people see on your face literally they know what you're thinking. Sarah says, oh, my face can really give my thoughts away. Yeah, absolutely. This sounds kind of strange in the sense that we talked about body language a couple months ago, I believe, in this On Track series, but practicing minimizing hand motions and gestures, it just keep focus on the conversation. You know, I mentioned voiced earlier with your keeping a calm voice, but really your whole physical self. If it starts to become a factor in what you're trying to portray, it can hinder people from listening to you. You know, if you've got crazy hand motions everywhere, or they feel they need to step back because you inadvertently might smack them because your hands are everywhere, it's going to hinder that communication. And what may seem innocent to you may come off as really aggressive. And so people tend to shut down and stop listening if anyone is becoming aggressive in their communication. Time yourself. When can you practice communicating assertively so that you can stay focused on your message? This goes back to earlier being clear and concise. You just have to keep things within control. If you're always in a hurry, maybe beneficial to try some other methods of communication. If no one can really follow what you're saying because you're in a rush, or if you're taking too long and people are falling asleep on you because you just can't get to what you want to say in a timely manner, that's going to be important as well to think about. And I'll say this, sometimes you ever feel like you're in the same conversation over and over with individuals in the workplace. People start to tune out sometimes because they've had this same talk over and over. So last thoughts, timing. You know, how do we know when we're supposed to be assertive? As professionals, you're always juggling through decisions. You need to know how to assess the situation. You know, what level of reaction is required, short-term, long-term, who's involved, consequences, how you respond. Will it have these consequences, both positive and negative? Do you really need to be assertive all the time? Again, do your opinions and thoughts, do they need to rule over you, that you need to express them every single time? That can be a balancing act, as I said before, with our behavior. Knowing that there are times that you do need to say something, and sometimes silence is okay. And you don't always need to take on someone else's role and responsibility. So again, assessing these situations. You know, so through this topic, I kind of reflected on my own, you know, I can reflect back on my first professional job after college, holding keys to my new position and actually asking my boss, do you really think I can do this? At that point, I'm so young as a professional. I'm so unsure. I have no idea what my skills are, that over 17 years, it's changed. So, you know, developing assertiveness can feel like imposter syndrome sometimes. You really don't know if what you're saying, what you're doing is right. But going back to that earlier statement that you are the subject matter expert, there's a reason for your hiring, your training. You need to take ownership of that. You need to have boldness with it and continue to learn and grow. As I mentioned before, I'm an advocate of lifelong learning. And so to continue to have confidence in your ideas and your abilities. Thank you. Is there any thoughts or questions that you all have?
Thank you, Val. I think that's incredible insight. So thank you. Now I know Val has a look.
She does.
We would invite you guys at this time you can take yourselves off mute to ask questions, or if you're more comfortable, you can drop them in the chat and we can answer those for you. Somebody has to go first, though. All right, well, you guys are thinking about those questions. I will just go ahead and say thank you. Thank you to everyone for finding time in your day to be with us and share this content. And thank you to Valerie for presenting. A special shout out to Upper Iowa University. And because Kate's not here, I'll say go Peacocks for her. And then also to TDS for sponsoring this program. We really appreciate their support. So couple ribbon cuttings coming up on the schedule. You guys are welcome to join us at those. Otherwise, we will stay on and answer any other questions. Thanks for being with us.